Here we go, testing out the Sony AS100 VR while I'm driving. This should be pretty good, I imagine. This camera allegedly can keep track of GPS, the speed we're traveling at, and all sorts of fun things like that. So I'll be looking forward to checking the video later and seeing what details we've got. Hopefully the car noises aren't too loud. I might have to move the camera next time. It's in the sun a little bit now. Nonetheless, here we go. Video everything. Right now it's Tuesday, January the 27th, 2015. Surprisingly warm for January. A bit of rain, but no snow at the moment. So I suppose we should have a topic to discuss. And probably the most interesting topic that's in the news these days is prescriptive versus descriptive grammar. Descriptive grammar tries to observe and give a picture of the English language as it is currently used and it has been used in the past. It describes what English is. Proscriptive or prescriptive proscribes or makes all sorts of rules about the English language. In general, there's very little basis for these actual rules. They tend to be made by small groups and don't have much actual backing. Other rules can be more generalized and used quite often. So word order, subject, verb, object, it's a very kind of standard general rule that's used quite often, although it can be broken, of course, and we still understand what people say generally when we change the word order in certain ways. Thank you. Yes, prescriptive. So there's what I would call pedantic rules and what I would call more general rules. Pedantic rules might, for example, it's getting a bit dark now. I'm in the tunnel. I'm not sure if you can see me very well. If you can see me, it probably looks orange. Okay, as far as the rules go, now, a general rule might be word order, but a more pedantic rule that doesn't really have any basis for fact might be, for example, splitting infinitives. Is it good or bad? If you meet somebody who tells you that splitting an infinitive is bad, then you're well within your rights to say, wait a minute, we're not speaking Latin. In the English language, splitting infinitives doesn't cause any problems. In fact, it can be used for all sorts of emphasis and other literate reasons. So, splitting infinitives now, that's one rule, but it gets there are even worse rules, and people on the internet tend to grab onto these rules and go around trying to basically point out the mistakes that anybody makes in English. Okay. Now, it is important to consider when we talk about prescriptive that people do tend to follow it for different reasons. If you were, for example, a French speaker, there's actually an Academy of French that decides what proper French is. And a couple of other languages, notably, have that sort of system as well. So, you know, there are actual rules set for certain languages. And so it's kind of generalized. People assume that English might have the same sort of thing. I'm sure you've heard about the Queen's English or the King's English or something like that. Famous grammarians, but we don't. There's no academy, no authority that will teach you how English should be used. There are style guides, depending on where you work, what you write for. There'll often be a style guide that teaches you how to use English in that particular publication. And those will generally help to create a more consistent publication. But again, they don't really have authority outside of an organization that's using that style guide. Now, couple that with the fact that English, even though, you know, it is the word English, you think England, obviously. But then there's American English, and Australian English, and New Zealand English, in the Philippines. There are many, many countries that speak English. There aren't so many countries that speak French. There are a couple, but not nearly as many, not nearly the diversity that you find with English. And languages are constantly changing and evolving. Famously, we have words like texting. I think twerking is in the dictionary now. Those are completely new, and you might hate the use of them, but they're part of the evolving language. So, with all that, making up these rules and trying to enforce them outside of the specific range of a style guide used by an organization, to me seems to be not only futile, but presumptuous and pretentious. Not a very nice thing to do. So I suppose when it comes down to, then, if we go back to the two basic types, descriptive and prescriptive, of course you can guess that I am full in favor of descriptive grammar. Now, that's not to say that teaching rules doesn't have its place. A lot of the students I teach are learning English for the first time, and it's very, very useful to have some general rules that help you put together words and sentences, especially when you're first building your lexicon, your vocabulary, and, you know, list of phrases and so on that you could go to. Let's see, an example of that sort of rule might be whether you're doing comparatives and superlatives, if you add ER or EST at the end, or if you do more or most. So big, bigger, biggest, or beautiful, more beautiful, the most beautiful, putting in the definite article there. Now, there's a very simple rule that works on a lot of occasions. You probably already know it. If the word is short, or the word ends in a Y, then it'll be ER or EST. If it's longer and doesn't end in a Y, then go with more or most. That's a general rule, and it's very useful. Suddenly, your vocabulary can explode because you can make all these comparative and superlative forms without having to look each and every one up in the dictionary. Of course, as with any rule in the English language, it's broken frequently and by the most frequent words. So when it comes to very frequent words like good, it doesn't become good, gooder, goodest, it becomes good, better, best. But that doesn't mean that the rule is not useful. It can really help in a lot of cases. and hopefully with frequent irregular words, irregular meaning that they don't follow the usual pattern, not that they're not common. Hopefully those words will come up often enough that you'll be able to just remember that good becomes better and best, and worse, bad becomes worse and worst. Okay. So yes, rules have their place in teaching, but trying to enforce the rules on anybody, I think, is a bad thing. I think is just going to discourage discourse. It's going to, especially people who speak English as a second language, it's going to discourage them, make them feel insecure or inconfident, lose their confidence in trying to communicate. And really, a lot of the time when these so-called grammar Nazis try to enforce their grammar views, they don't really have any grounding or any authority to do so. In fact, quite often they're wrong. Maybe another time we can go into some examples of different English myths and so on. But for today, I think I've ranted long enough, and hopefully you'll agree with me. Descriptive is better than prescriptive grammar. But nonetheless, thank you for watching. I hope this worked. This is my first time trying to blog using this camera. We'll see how it goes. See you next time.